Environmentalists, entrepreneurs and some major hotel properties are up in arms over a proposed project by Royal Caribbean International on Paradise Island. They say this deal is no good for the Bahamas. Royal Caribbean's proposed Royal Beach Club has already been approved by the government. Its CEO, Michael Bailey, says that it is only a beach club and not a major resort, and he sees no reason why everyone can't get a piece of the pie and play well together. Recently, we sat with the president and CEO as he explained the integrity of this project and why it should not be a problem to us. Our one-on-one tonight, the controversial case of the RCI Beach Club. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Our discussion begins right after this break. So the project really pays itself back.
Correct.
They set up
at the conference, the school.
As a journalist, I always have to focus on the facts, and sometimes that means going to investigate for myself. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. right here on RTV.
In March, Royal Caribbean International announced that its beach club on Paradise Island is set to open in 2025, with the company having received governmental approval to proceed with the project. The government announced that it granted approval to Royal Caribbean International for its $100 million beach club project on Paradise Island. I'm happy to welcome to On the Record Michael Bailey, the President and CEO of Royal Caribbean International. So welcome to On the Record. Welcome to the Bahamas.
Thank you. Very nice to be here.
No, of course, this is not your first trip, but I can officially welcome you here to On the Record. I want to quote, start with a quote from you. It says, "The Bahamas has been a phenomenal partner since the very start, when they became our first port of call more than 50 years ago." Talk about why the Bahamas has been such a phenomenal partner for you.
Well, I have to say that Royal Caribbean's first voyage when it started as a cruise line was to the Bahamas, and that was 53 years ago. I also have to tell you that when I joined Royal Caribbean 42 years ago as a entry-level shipboard employee, one of the first ports I ever sailed into was Nassau. And, you know, it's a blessed, beautiful series of islands, and it's loved by so many. And I think the Bahamas has always been part of Royal Caribbean in many ways. We've sailed here for 50 years. We've brought tens and tens and tens of millions of tourists to the Bahamas. We first opened Coco Cay. Mm-hmm. I think that must have been 30 or 40 years ago.
Decades ago.
Decades ago. So we've just had this incredibly long history with the Bahamas, and I think when you think about the Grand Bahama Shipyard in Grand Bahama, that's a Royal Caribbean venture with Carnival Cruise Lines and others. A Coco Cay project, which has been a huge success and is now the #1 destination for Royal Caribbean in the world.
Wow.
It is rated the highest from a guest satisfaction perspective, and of course Nassau. You know, so we've had this long relationship, and the Bahamas has a special place in, I guess, in our hearts.
I want to introduce another quote from you that will bring me to my next question. You said, as we continue to bring millions of visitors to experience attractions throughout Nassau each year, the Royal Beach Club at Paradise Island is the next bold adventure in Royal Caribbean's commitment to both increasing tourism in the Bahamas and delivering memorable vacations to our guests. Why was the Bahamas chosen for this project?
The Bahamas was chosen for this project because of our history with the Bahamas. I think also the Bahamas has this incredible geographical, beautiful location next to the largest market on the planet. I think we feel as if we've got a lot of our ships that sail through and into the Bahamas. Remember, nearly all of our ships are registered in the Bahamas as well. And we just thought it was a natural fit to add an experience in Nassau, given how we see the future of our business and we see the future of cruise tourism coming to the Bahamas. There will be a lot more cruise tourists coming over the next several years. And I think we all understand that we have to keep creating new experiences in Nassau if we're going to satisfy those customers and if we want them to come back. I think what we've seen with Bahama in terms of a brand new, huge resort, which is really coming to life now, I think it's a great success for the Bahamas and Nassau. When you think of Margaritaville, which is another great attraction that people are interested in visiting. And then you think about the cruise port. That cruise port now is a world-class cruise port. I know it officially opens in a month or two. I know Mike's done an amazing job in bringing that project to life. That's been a challenging project, but it's a world-class cruise port. It's one of the best in the world. And of course, the Beach Club is yet another experience that really adds to, and I'm going to use the word, the brand, not the Royal Caribbean brand, the Bahamas brand, and Nassau. And in many ways, you have to think about Nassau as a product, which is part of a brand, the Bahamas. And customers, especially international customers, have choice. And they're constantly thinking about the choices that they have, and those choices are based upon how they perceive the quality of their experience. So it behooves all of us to continue to improve the product so that more and more people want to come here, and more people will come and enjoy themselves.
Interesting take. At the time the government announced its approval of the project, Deputy Prime Minister Chester Cooper said the government is satisfied that it has addressed previous objections to the project by ensuring much greater Bahamian participation at all phases of the construction and in ongoing operations. Explain for us greater Bahamian participation.
The product, as you may or may not know, we're now recruiting for the Royal Beach Club president, the Bahamian. The operation of the Beach Club will be almost exclusively Bahamian folks who are operating the Beach Club. The providers of services to the Beach Club will be Bahamian businesses and entrepreneurs. The product itself, the experience, is Bahamian music, Bahamian food. It's a Bahamian Beach Club experience, so it'll be Bahamian. I think the biggest change that occurred is in the ownership of the Beach Club. And the Royal Beach Club is the first, I believe, public-private partnership ever in the tourism sector in the Bahamas. It's a very progressive model. It provides for the Crown land to be placed into the company fundamentally as an asset which becomes equity in ownership of that whole entity. And there will be an opportunity for individual investors, Bahamian investors, to invest in the beach club, and so that the Bahamian ownership of the Royal Beach Club will be up to 49%. That means that dividends will be paid to the investors, either individually as a regular citizen, or from the government's perspective, there will be dividends paid and revenues paid to the government, which goes into the Bahamas National Fund.
Okay, consolidated.
So it's a clever model. You know, it creates a stream of revenue and profits for the Bahamas. It provides individual investors with opportunity to be passive investors. It opens the door for new and more businesses to provide goods and services to the beach club. And the beach club itself will fundamentally have, I don't know how many employees at this point, but hundreds of employees who will be Bahamian.
Now, we'll talk a little bit more about the ownership aspect in a moment, but I want to back up a bit as to how we got here. The project is said to be first of a kind for Royal Caribbean, and it covers 17 acres, of which 13 acres represents privately held land on some 4 acres of Crown land that you just mentioned that were included in the lease to Royal Caribbean by the former administration. The former Prime Minister confirmed that his administration had planned to sign off on the Royal Beach Club deal on Paradise Island and its Freeport deals involving the Grand Lucayan acquisition and cruise port expansion together at the same time. He admitted that the approval of the Paradise Island plans hinged on it proceeding in Freeport. What happened? Why is that? Why did you not proceed with the deal as first discussed with the former administration?
I think one word: pandemic. I think if you remember, up until 2019, the world was a very different place. As the cruise industry, as everybody, as we all went through the pandemic, it was a remarkably challenging period. Many businesses failed. Many people went through a lot of hardship. It was an extremely challenging time. It was no different for Royal Caribbean as a corporation. And for the cruise industry, if you think about our entire industry, was literally shut down for nearly 2 years. And there was no government support for the industry. The industry had to literally borrow billions and billions of dollars to maintain and stay afloat, literally, to continue maintaining the ships and providing for families and taking care of the basics. And that was a huge shock to the industry. That changed the whole landscape as it relates to capital investments, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, the other piece of that was time. You know, time passed, perspectives changed, and the ability to embark on these projects all at the same time became significantly less, which I think most people would understand. I was talking to someone yesterday, we were talking about putting a fence around the property here, pre-pandemic, and they were given a price for putting the fence around their property, and they didn't do it. They couldn't do it because they went into the pandemic.
Clearly, the pandemic wrought lots of havoc on the cruise industry, as Mr. Bailey said. When we come back, though, we're going to talk about the future of that Grand Bahama deal and much more. You're watching On the Record. Stay close. So the project really pays itself back.
Correct.
They set up
At the conference,
the school.
As a journalist, I always have to focus on the facts, and sometimes that means going to investigate for myself. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. right here on RTV.
Welcome back. When we left off our discussion, we had really only touched the tip of the iceberg, especially on the issue of Grand Bahama. RCI's President Michael Bailey and I got on to talk about the subject of the Grand Bahama project and, of course, things like projected employment. We pick up that discussion once more.
Is the Freeport deal completely off the table? Is it something that Royal Caribbean would revisit in the future?
So the Freeport deal really consisted of, I would say, of two components. The one component was the port of Freeport, which was expanding the capability of the port to accommodate much larger ships and bring more capacity into the port. That's part of it. The other part of it was the Grand Lucayan and the development of really a significant destination experience on that property. The Freeport component, the port itself component, that project in a different shape, but that project has been revisited, and there are positive discussions occurring not only with Royal Caribbean but other cruise lines and the Port Authority, et cetera, and the government to bring that project back to life. And I would hope that in the coming months we will be able to make a positive announcement about Freeport. For the Grand Lucayan, if I recall, there was an offer that appeared on the landscape for the Grand Lucayan Resort, which subsequently fell through. So that again changed that whole deal as it was because of those changes, the pandemic time, and then this other offer that came in that subsequently fell through. From a conceptual perspective, I think that project could be a phenomenal success. And from a personal perspective, of someone who leads Royal Caribbean International, I would love to see that project come alive again. But still the timing is slightly against us. But my dream would be to bring that project back.
Do you see Royal Caribbean ever being a part of that?
I do. I think it's complicated. It's finding a lot of the components necessary to bring investment to the table, including the airport. You know, there's a lot of things that need to come together to really bring that destination together for, I'm going to use the words mass market, which is volume. You've got to have a great airport and you've got to have great quality product to offer the market. So when you think about our business model, Royal Caribbean International, we carry 6 million guests a year across markets all over the world, everywhere, every continent. And we have a pretty sophisticated marketing machine that's connected through the various distribution channels that's capable of generating very good demand. And we also have a great reputation to the consumer. So I think it's possible. It requires time and it requires bringing a lot of people to the table. But from an opportunity perspective, I think it's a great opportunity.
I want to take our discussion back now to the participation of Bahamians in this project. Deputy Prime Minister Cooper is on record saying that Royal Caribbean International will not have equity ownership in any ferry business from Prince George Wharf to the site. Several key activities of the site, including water sports, entertainment, tours, food, beverage, retail, security, environmental monitoring, and landscaping, will be reserved primarily for Bahamian entrepreneurs and businesses. What guarantees can you give us, or what guarantees do we have that these conditions are going to be kept?
Well, I think we are developing a significant $60-70 million project. Our intention is to create a phenomenal beach club experience. The our intention is to do exactly what's stated, and that's what we're planning on doing. I think for anyone who runs a business, has run a business, runs a business, or is engaging in a significant project, you understand that your goal, your concept is one thing. You recognize that your target is to get as close as you possibly can to the concept. The journey to the concept is fraught with issues and problems. And some you solve and some you can't. But your intention is to get to that destination and that goal, and that is our intention.
But again, are there any, the Deputy Prime Minister has said these things will be reserved for Bahamians. And you have many small Bahamian businesses out there who feel locked out of sometimes these kinds of deals because they're larger companies who will come in and operate things on their own. And so there's always that concern that they may not be able to participate.
We're going to give all of the Bahamian entrepreneurs and small businesses an opportunity to participate. That's our commitment.
The Deputy Prime Minister also said that the government will impose a Tourism Development Fund levy of 1% of the annual gross revenue of the Royal Beach Club. Can you explain the benefits of that to Bahamians?
Well, that 1% on the gross revenue basically will go into the national, my understanding is it'll go into the national fund, and therefore it's yet another revenue stream that comes into the national fund, along with the dividends on the equity of the Crown land that's placed into the enterprise. So it's a constant stream of revenue coming into the national fund from the beach club.
Any projections on what that might be?
The total revenue that would be generated in dividends and the 1%? No, not. I don't have those projections. I would say they will be significant. I mean, our projections is this will be a very profitable business.
Again, referencing comments from the Deputy Prime Minister, the government intends to convert the Crown land contribution into an equity stake of the project. That equity stake will be conveyed to the country's sovereign wealth fund. Bahamians will also be invited to invest in the project and hold equity up to 49%, with the remainder being held by Royal Caribbean International. Let's talk about that. I know we mentioned that earlier, but let's talk about the opportunities and what does that mean for Bahamians. Listening to this interview, if I'm home and I'm considering an investment opportunity, what does this mean for me?
It means that there will be an investment fund, or we will use a Bahamian investment firm to create fundamentally a Royal Beach Club investment fund. And that will allow an investor, a Bahamian investor, to invest a reasonable amount. It could be $100, $500, $1,000 into that fund. That fund will then own all of the equity that doesn't belong to the government in terms of the government's share of the equity based upon the land that they put into the business. That equity will then return a dividend, and that dividend then will be paid to the investor. So if somebody put in $1,000 and the dividend paid, for example, 10%, they would receive $100 profit every year from their $1,000 investment. That's an example. Obviously, I don't know what the dividend will be, but.
And why is this such a unique opportunity when you look at the existing tourism projects in this country that are not Bahamian owned? Why is this such a unique opportunity as you see it?
Well, you think about the major tourism projects in the Bahamas. Bahama, for example, is, as far as I know, owned by a Hong Kong corporation. Atlantis is owned by a Canadian property conglomerate. Margaritaville is owned, I don't know if I'm just thinking, Margaritaville is probably owned by a group of primarily American investors. I could I can't think of other properties here, but there's so many.
We could go on and on.
We could go on and on and on. And I would suggest that if we went on and on and on, we would find that the vast majority of those assets are foreign owned in its entirety. Every single piece of it is owned by a foreign entity. The Beach Club is the first public-private partnership, which yes, Royal Caribbean will own 51% of the entity, but 49% of that is owned by, one, the government through the land that's put into it, which is really the people's land, the Crown land, and then individual investors, Bahamians. So it's incredibly unique. And I think it's, I'm going to say the first time, I don't know for sure, but it's the first time that a significant project that's part of the most important sector in the Bahamas, the tourism sector, is opened up for Bahamian investment at scale. I think it's a unique opportunity and it's meaningful. And I think there should be a sense of pride for that. That's a great deal.
In a partnership, when there's the minority shareholder, there is always the concern about whether that minority shareholder's investment will be protected. And as a minority shareholder, how do you make, what assurances will you give that the Bahamians' investment will be protected?
Our role is to protect the assets of our company, obviously, and we have a huge number of shareholders in the Royal Caribbean Group. We have a fiduciary responsibility to our investors. We're responsible for ensuring that we manage the assets and their investments to the highest degree, and that we do everything in our power to maximize their investment. That same guarantee is for all of our investors, regardless of whether they're from the United States, the Bahamas, the Europe. We have the same responsibility. There is nothing that would make you believe that we would not try to maximize that investment in the Bahamas.
Let's talk about jobs. Government has predicted that this project will create hundreds of jobs in the construction phase and in the operational phase. Let's first talk about those construction and temporary jobs. How many do you expect to create? And then the full-time jobs that are expected.
So I can tell you with great certainty that I don't know. I don't know the exact number. I mean, I just don't. I mean, I think we know that over the period of the period of bringing the Beach Club to life, this will engage hundreds upon hundreds of workers, managers, supervisors, engineers, architects, technicians, construction experts. That's inevitable. We do this project. We just recently opened a new $125 million terminal in Galveston, Texas, and that project did continue through the pandemic because we were completely committed and financially committed to that. And by the way, that is the first terminal on the planet that is entirely solar powered. It's unique from that perspective.
Any possibility of bringing that technology to this project?
We are going to bring a lot of technology as it relates to the environmental footprint to this project. We have technology that we've been developing and utilizing on our cruise ships for decades. And I would encourage you, if you haven't already, we would love to show you our environmental management systems on board these ships. They are state of the art. And I would say that if a town, a country had the same system, they would be really pleased with how they're managing waste, whether it's waste water or solid waste. And I think that technology we're bringing to the Beach Club.
So just so you know, my entire team is waving to say, yes, we'll take you up on the offer to come see the technology.
Yeah, no problem. I'll happily take you around.
In many ways, Mr. Bailey has no idea what he has walked into, sort of. By this segment, we now know that hundreds of local jobs are available should this project come to fruition, and even before. So let's hear more from RCI when On the Record returns right after this. So the project really pays itself back.
Correct.
They set up
At the conference,
the school.
As a journalist, I always have to focus on the facts, and sometimes that means going to investigate for myself. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. right here on RTV.
And welcome back. You're watching On the Record, our interview with Royal Caribbean's President Michael Bailey. We know many environmentalists are up in arms about this project, but so is Atlantis. We were surprised when Atlantis' president sent such a strong statement. And now for more on our one-on-one.
March 15th, the managing director of Atlantis Paradise Island Resort, Audrey Oswell, called on the Bahamian government to reconsider its approval of this project. Let's deal with the environmental impact first. If your project is for a private beach club on Paradise Island, does this not take away from potential visitors from downtown Nassau and adjacent experiences? Let's talk about that first.
Okay, so let me give you a couple of points to this. We started buying the land back in 2017. I visited that land on multiple occasions over many years. And I have to tell you, in all of the time I visited that land over a period of about 6 years, I don't think I've ever seen anybody from downtown go there. What I have seen is I've seen tourists from Atlantis walk down there, but I've never seen anyone from downtown because it's very difficult to get there. And I think if you do want to go there, you've probably got to go through Atlantis. I don't know, but it's just not practical. So nobody's going there. Secondly, as far as I know, regardless of who owns the land, the Bahamian people have a right to access the beach up to the high watermark, regardless of who claims ownership of the land, which I think is similar in many countries around the world. So the beach is always accessible. So that concern is, to a certain degree, concerns me. I understand it's a valid concern, but it's the same. It's the same as the beach at Bahama. It's the same as the beach in Atlantis. It's the same as the beach all over the Bahamas. There's no difference. The difference is that we're very happily going to provide discounted day passes for local residents if they want to come and have some fun at the beach club. So, I think to me that's the best of both worlds. And the beauty of that is that today, if you did want to come to the derelict buildings that are falling down on that space that we've purchased, you still have to figure out how to get across from Nassau. Now, part of this project is the water taxi business. The water taxi business is about to flourish because to bring those guests from the cruise ships to the beach club, they have to come on water taxis.
But would you appreciate the concern, though, that if your passengers are coming off of a ship, taking a water taxi over to a beach, they're not going to downtown Nassau, they're not going into stores, they're not doing tours?
Yeah. So we've started talking to the retailers about that. Part of the reasons why the beach club is a great win, one, is that if you go to the beach club, you will be going through the straw market. That won't change. So the straw market will be accessible to all of the guests who go to the beach club or not. The beauty of this is that, one, as part of the Nassau product or brand, we're expanding the options for people to enjoy themselves. What does that mean? It means that we can bring more people here than we're currently bringing today. So this year we're going to bring around 1 million tourists to Nassau itself. Our projections in 2027, which is only a few years away, we will bring 2.5 million cruise tourists to Nassau. Only around 40% of those 2.5 million would be able to go to the beach club. The remainder will go into Nassau and to destination experiences around the island. So there will be more people coming. So there should be no concern about somehow this belief that, well, these guests are being diverted to the beach club, so we're never going to see them, they're never going to spend any money. It's simply not accurate.
Oswald went on to say that I believe the green light is premature with so many unanswered questions regarding the project's environmental and economic impact still to be addressed. How do you respond to that when she says she thinks it's premature because of all of the questions that still exist?
So today, to answer the question, today there was a letter, an open letter from I think 4 or 5 environmentally conscious citizens who expressed concern over, in a similar vein to Audrey's articulated concern. And of course, I think we're all missing a point here, which is the project is being green lighted, which means a lot of the big elements of this have been agreed. The public-private partnership, Bahamian ownership, Bahamian engagement, all of those things. You shouldn't be, you're not entitled to engage in the water taxi business, but obviously we're going to have to support that business. All of those things have been agreed. That's a fundamental business deal. This is what we're going to do. They have not approved the doing it. We now have to go through all of the necessary governmental processes that anyone who's engaged in a major construction project has to complete. And one of those things is the environmental process, the DEPP. We have to go through a process of submitting very detailed plans. Those plans are reviewed by the DEPP. Those plans then are commented on by the DEPP. And we have an opportunity to respond to those comments. Those plans are then posted for public comment. So those plans are made available to anyone who's interested. There's a period of public comment where everybody can comment, including the 4 or 5 or 6 people who wrote the letter to the daily paper this morning and to Audrey's comments. And let's get the comments and let's make sure that we're creating something that everybody is satisfied is doing the right job. So, the green light is great. It's true, yes, we've got a green light. We need the green light because we're starting to invest millions in all of this work. We can't go through all of this process and then learn that there's no approval for the overall project. We need to understand that, yes, if you comply with everything that you need to comply with, you go through the environmental process, you go through the permitting process, you go through the construction process, we approve the project.
I want to talk, though, about some of those concerns raised by Oswell, and the same concerns have been raised by the environmental group with the open letter. Coastline and pristine beach expansion, seawalls, jetties, other construction. Her statement's going on to say that Atlantis has identified a thriving coral reef on the north seabed and determined that this will have potential impact on the health of the reef, must be carefully assessed and mitigated. Again, these are real concerns that have been raised. And I want you to sort of speak to, even preliminarily, how do you plan to address those concerns? This is sort of still pending the overall environmental impact assessment.
Those concerns have to be addressed as we go through the process that I've just articulated. We have to do detailed analysis. We have to prepare a detailed plan. We have to present it to the authority that represents the Bahamian people to ensure that we are managing this project in the appropriate way and safeguarding the environment. So I think, I've forgotten the old saying now, but the cart's getting ahead of the horse.
The horse.
Yeah, I think there is a process, and we're now going through the process, and all of these questions will be responded to as we go through the process. It is the DEPP who have the responsibility for ensuring that us or anyone else going about their business and creating a project is fully compliant with all of the requirements to protect the environment, and that's exactly what we will do. So as we go through this process, and as we reach each milestone with the DEPP, all of this information will be made publicly available, and there'll be time for comments. So, the thriving coral on the North Shore, let's wait until we do the study. Let's confirm all of these circumstances. Let's understand what the analysis tells everybody, and let's see if we have concerns over it. We don't want to build a project that's going to have any negative impact on the environment. And I have to point out, because I think, I'd just like to remind everybody, it's called a beach club. We're not building an airport. We're not building a massive hotel casino. We're not building a giant factory. The very thing we're trying to create is a beach experience, and most of it's there. So there are no, for example, there was quotes about overwater cabanas. There are no overwater cabanas. So there's, I think my request is, could we just be a little patient as we go through the process, and the process that's defined by the government for the Bahamas.
Some very serious issues addressed here in this segment. Let's take a break and return with more On the Record right after this. So the project really pays itself back.
Correct.
They set up
At the conference,
the school.
As a journalist, I always have to focus on the facts, and sometimes that means going to investigate for myself. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. right here on RTV.
You're watching On the Record. Welcome back to our final segment. Let's get right back to our interview where Mr. Bailey tells us about the process of his project and the matter of Toby Smith.
Are you able to map out to us what that process is looking like? If there's an environmental assessment being done, is there a timeline, and when can we expect that? And I'll leave you to answer that question first. Do we have any idea on timelines at this point?
We have an idea on timelines. I think what we could do is we could probably we could send out a broad timeline, and we could help people understand. As long as people understand it's a broad timeline, we don't control all of these different elements, and anyone who's been involved in these projects knows you can't nail it down to the exact day. It could be, by this month, we hope to have all of this work done and submitted, and we hope that the review will take place, and that this month we hope to have this information publicly available.
This group of environmentalists who wrote the open letter, they represent some of the oldest and most well-known environmental groups like the Bahamas National Trust, BREEF, Save the Bays, Re-Earth, on and on. They have alleged that there's been a lack of transparency with no opportunity for public input and dialogue. As you've said, those things are coming.
Yeah.
And so will there be, for instance, in their letter, they've asked for an online public access to all documents, responses to mitigation plans, open in-person online town meetings, written responses to many of the unanswered questions. Can you give any guarantee, or can you say if those things will be addressed? Because there seems to be a concern just over a lack of information.
So two things. One is that the lack of information is that the journey through this had litigation in place, and there was a local entrepreneur who had a project, who has a project, and had claimed that land that was going to be leased to this project was conflicting with land that he had a lease for. There was a lawsuit in place. We were asked to remain silent during the period of the lawsuit. And as a responsible corporation, we didn't want to get involved in that discussion or make any comments or statements that we thought may prejudice one way or another. So we remained silent, and we remained silent while a lot of opinions were floated around about what was going on. We waited until the court case reached its conclusion, and as we know, that the judge ruled against the entrepreneur. I understand that he's appealing that, but nevertheless, that was one of the reasons for the silence, is we didn't want to start talking about plans while this litigation was ongoing, and that's been resolved. As it relates to the public access to the information for everything that we're doing, we are going to comply and follow the process that's outlined by the government process. And all of that information will come through that process. And I think it's important that we all agree that that's the right thing to do. I mean, if we have a governmental authority responsible for environmental management representing the Bahamas, and we are required to follow their process and submit all of our plans and answer all of the questions through that with a public forum, we're happy to participate in that.
From where you sit, I mean, there have been a lot of calls for information and transparency, but from what you're saying, this is a process that is being driven by government, correct?
This is a process that's been driven by litigation and by process, the government process, yes.
Okay, and so everybody's sort of been quiet and not responding, even though on the other side there's been a lot of opinions. So, keeping all that in mind, are you prepared now to sit down with the environmentalists, with Atlantis, who's your next door neighbor, who's expressed concern? Are you prepared to meet with those individuals, to begin discussions, or to have that open dialogue?
So we invited Audrey to meet with us about 2 months ago, and we went to Paradise Island. We went to the site of the project, and Audrey and team came over, and we walked the site, and we explained how we saw the project in conversation, and Audrey raised points and questions and concerns, and we listened to them. We said, well, thank you for the feedback. We more than happily come back to you and talk about how we think we can resolve these issues or concerns that you have. And subsequently, we had a second meeting. But at that point, I think they'd taken a different position. They didn't want us to provide any detailed information. They were willing to wait for the process to be followed so that it could be accessed through the correct channel. And then they've made multiple statements since then. So, again, we are going to follow the process that's laid out by the Bahamian government, and we hope that process will be satisfactory for all stakeholders.
Do you see any agreement with them going forward? Do you think that's possible?
I don't see any disagreement. I think, listen, opinion, public discourse, environmental concerns, retailers concerned about the impact on the stores, these are all valid comments, and I think what we need to do, and we're doing, is we're meeting with more and more people, and we're having these interviews, and we're trying to explain. We don't have any malice in our hearts. We're not trying to create a problem. We're trying to, ironically, work as a team to enhance the overall attractiveness of Nassau for our millions of customers who love Royal Caribbean, who trust Royal Caribbean, and when they buy a cruise with Royal Caribbean, they expect and they trust us to do the very best to deliver the best experience for them.
I just want to spend a little time on the case regarding Toby Smith. I know the matter was dealt with at the court, and as you indicated, may be appealing. He's a Bahamian entrepreneur seeking to restore, as he says, Paradise Island's lighthouse to former glories. He has been competing with Royal Caribbean to lease the same 2-acre Crown land parcel that he claims the former administration sought to grant both parties. Is there a compromise possible anywhere?
The compromise is that Royal Caribbean had a signed lease for 7 acres of Crown land, and that signed lease is a legal document. And we were willing, and we compromised, and we agreed at the request of the government to literally rewrite the lease and to remove the acres that were in dispute. We have no conflict with Toby. We've never had a conflict with Toby. We've simply worked and tried to move forward with what we think is a very exciting project. We're also a company that has a huge amount of experience, knowledge, and expertise and capital who can bring these projects to existence. So we feel as if we've done the right thing all the way through this. I mean, you know, the opinions, the thoughts that have been exchanged, the statements that have been made, I don't think we've made any negative statements about anybody. You know, we're good faith people. We're trying to create a great product. We had our lease. We were trying to move forward with our project. There was conflict. We removed ourselves from the conflict. We have no conflict. Now, if Toby can successfully create a plan, can manage the financing, can create a product, good luck to him. You know, anybody.
There's no issue coexisting.
There's no. I mean, I think this is the misunderstanding. Again, we think of this as a team effort. Nassau is a product. We bring millions of people here. We want the best for the product. Now, we can do it ourselves, the Beach Club. We can do it with the Bahamian people, the Beach Club. We can do it with anybody. We don't have a particular dimension on this. You know, we have a hugely successful global cruise business, but this destination is phenomenally important. Let's work together. Let's figure out how we can make everything better. We applaud entrepreneurs who can create an experience that customers want. You know, that somebody says, oh, this is fantastic. I mean, we're here in this Bahama resort. It's a great resort. It's full of people. They've flown in from America and Canada. They paid a lot of money for the experience. They do that because it's a great product. They want to buy it. And I think, you know, this is the same with any entrepreneur who wants to create an experience. We're happy to help and participate. You know, for the 1 million people who get off our ships in Nassau today, they go on tours all over the island. They go to here, they go to Atlantis, they go to Margaritaville, they go to Grey Cliffs, they go take a walking tour on the steps, they go to shopping on the retail. They do all of these things. Great. Now, what they do tell us is that they're getting a little tired of it, that the product needs refreshing, that they've been here many times before and it feels the same. You know, when you look at the customer data, what people say about the experience, Nassau rates in the bottom 10% of customer satisfaction scores for the experience. Now, for anyone who's in the customer service business, you know, if your customers tell you it's okay, you better try working on fixing it. Because if you don't fix it, they will walk away from you.
Is the Royal Beach Club the fix?
It's not the fix. The Royal Beach Club is one element of a fix. This hotel is a fix. Margaritaville is a fix. The Beach Club is a fix. The port is a fix.
We're going to talk about the port in a moment.
All of these things, when you add them up, create a better product for the customer. And all we're saying is, let's work together. You know, we've had conversations with different groups. Why don't we form a team? And I mean a team of cruise and hotel and gaming and government and retailers. Just put a small team together of executives who can work on a plan to see what we can create. Can we bring in foreign investment? Can we bring in public-private partnership? What can we do to improve the product?
Which brings me really to our last segment as we're preparing to wrap up. Two things I want to get into. First being downtown Nassau. The downtown Nassau experience, as you've indicated and as your customer surveys indicate, is not the best. Bahamians complain about it. Tourists complain about it. Just very high level, what are some of the things that you think need to be done to improve the experience of downtown Nassau, firstly?
One, pull together, have a survey of the customers every day in Bay Street for 2 weeks. Ask them. Start to understand how the customer sees this experience. 2, contact the cruise lines. Our cruise line will be happy to provide data. Ask other cruise lines to do the same thing. What are the customers saying about this experience? Aggregate your information. Prioritize that information. What are they saying? What are the big things they say and the little things that they say? For example, often people complain that there's a lot of friction points. It's difficult. They feel it's too chaotic for them. Some people complain that it doesn't feel very clean. If you go into these resorts here, Atlantis, are spotless. You go on our cruise ships, they're spotless. Why do you think we all make them spotless? Because customers really appreciate that when they're on vacation. So on that list of things for Bay Street, for example, there's a whole bunch of little things that we could all fix quite quickly. I don't know what those little things are, but clean up Bay
That's
Street.
the point. Mm-hmm.
Don't leave the trash on the street. You know, I've often been there and I see trash on big bags of trash. Imagine if you came into this hotel and you're checking in and there's 5 bags of trash by the side of the check-in desk.
Time to check out.
You would think to yourself, well, hello, that doesn't look so great. These are little things. You know, the way things look, you know, plants, flowers. Go to any shopping mall. Go to a shopping mall in Miami. A lot of people go to Miami shopping. Go to Aventura. Go to Sawgrass Mills. What do you see in those shopping malls? Mm-hmm. You see comfort, cleanliness. You see plants and flowers. You get the sense that it's all well-being. That creates good feeling with the customer. It makes them open their wallets more. So I don't know. I'm just
No, and these are very sort of basic things that I think that can be done.
I think my point is that the beach club is like another experience. It's not a perfect day at Coco Key. It's not a total experience. It's one element of an experience that enhances the customer's engagement with the product. The product is Nassau.
And a good point to end on, the controversial case of the RCI Beach Club, our topic tonight. We thank RCI CEO Michael Bailey for being our guest here on the show, and we are quite sure that this interview has been insightful and has answered quite a few questions that you and our viewers were unclear on. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Make sure to tune in next week when we have another topic that directly affects the lives of Bahamians. Until then, I'm Jerome Sawyer. We'll see you again soon.